hopefully you're, so don't be shy. Andy showed you that there are these kind of stickies that you can start submitting questions for us on the KaiStorm platform. But in the meantime, while you're kind of getting your questions kind of posted, I want to introduce my colleagues. Jean Van Briesen is the Division Director of CBET, my home division, Chemical, Bioengineering, Environmental, and Transport Systems. And she's a rotator from Carnegie Mellon. That's her home institution. And then we have Rob Stone, who is the Division Director of CMMI, which is Civil, Mechanical, and Manufacturing Innovation. And he's a rotator from Oregon State. Then we have Jose Zayas Castro, who is the Division Director of the Division of Engineering Education and Centers, and he is a rotator from the University of South Florida. And then we have Shekhar Bansali, who is the Division Director of ECCS, which is Electrical Communications and Cyber Systems. I think I got that right. And his home institution is Florida International University. So at least so far, I think people are being shy with their questions. So Rose, you had some to start us off?
So sure. One of the ones that we typically receive is, I have a proposal that will, I think, overlap with CBET and with ECCS. What should I do?
Well, I'll do the first, because this is a common question of basically, you know, my project seems to fit in more than one program. And again, for career, you can only submit your proposal to one primary program, and it's your decision on which program to submit to. So it takes a lot of legwork. So it's really studying the program descriptions, looking at what has been awarded. You know, at the bottom of each program description, there's a link so you can see what kind of projects have been recently awarded. And also a theme this week will be, you know, don't be afraid to contact program officers and to kind of send a one-pager of your project idea to get input on your, to get their opinion on program fits. And so it's, you use all this information, kind of basically it's fact finding that you have to do, then to kind of determine which program really aligns to really the core, the heart of your proposal. And you can, when you submit your proposal, indicate secondary programs on the cover sheet. And that will basically alert the program directors of other programs that, hey, this project might also align with your program. And that kind of sets in motion, because we do talk to each other, you know, how we kind of treat that in terms of the review or any of the further recommendations and such. So I was wondering if any of my colleagues kind of had some questions on or comments on that theme. Okay.
Sounds like you nailed it, Carol.
Yeah.
Okay, well,
Absolutely.
I just want to emphasize that we, you know, all of us work for you, and you know, this time of year is really ripe with, you know, getting communications from you on your career projects. So and it's also what we call closeout time soon. So we're all busy, you know, same as you, but we are looking for these emails and we're getting through them as fast as you can. So don't be disheartened if you don't get a response within a day or so. Maybe, you know, if you don't get a response within a week, then don't be shy. You know, just kind of, you know, gently ping, resend that email like, on to get this to your top of your inbox, and put career in the subject line, because we are looking for those. And that's kind of a hint. So we do have some questions coming in. Let's see. Let's see, we had insights, recommendations on how to pick the most suitable directorate program to submit our career proposal. Again, I think that's going to be a theme of the workshop, of kind of what we call determining program fit and kind of navigating your way through NSF, because NSF is divided by discipline areas. Here's a question: what are the common mistakes you see in proposals? So some of them, a lot of the mistakes, of course, you have control over. It's really having a very clear message, having very clear to the reviewers on what is the intellectual merit, what fundamental knowledge would result from this work, and why you should care about it. And then there's the broader impacts, which includes the broader impacts of the research itself. So be sure to include that. And we'll have some sessions later in this workshop that will kind of dig into some of these common mistakes. And I think in general, you want to talk to the program officer, because one concept that I think you want to be cognizant of is who your audience is. And it's not us as program directors, it's the reviewers. The reviewers are your audience. And so you want to make sure you understand that audience, because in engineering, we have dedicated career panels. And in each program, they kind of have a different flavor. So of course, we're not going to talk about, who the reviewers are, but we can kind of say, well, typically I have one career panel and it contains all these topics. And so you're talking to the experts in your area. And then you're also talking to the person sitting next to them who might be an expert in another topic that is covered under the program description. So it kind of has these dual layers that you're communicating to. So any comments for my comments?
So Carol, can I add anything?
Yes, please.
Say is particularly for career is like that integration of the research and the education plan. It's like they need to like live with each other, depend upon each other. They don't, you don't want them to look like they're two separate things that you've sort of pasted together, but sort of weave them into and show how they do play back and forth and support each other. So that'd be my only other thing I would add.
Just to add to what Rob said, two things. If you're doing robotics, you're in a good space because robotics is a meta program. So whether it's ECCS, CMMI, if you're going to construction robot that requires civil, electrical, and computer science, we have a meta program for it, so you can send it there. That accepts careers. And the other thing I would really ask you to think about, careers, like Rob says, foundational. Research and education need to play, but also, there are two phases, R&D. So don't start with research and switch to development right in the middle. I want to make a widget. Careers are long-term problems. So if your goal is to make a widget that's going to solve the world's problem in 3 years, it's not a foundational challenge. That's just my opinion, right? Again, how you articulate it comes down to, but focus on, like Carol said, fundamental transformational issues that are long-term.
I would like to comment a little bit, if I may, Carol, on
Sure.
So picking up on what Rob and Shaker said. The whole aspect of needs to look integrated, and that should show also in your timetable, your overall project management. And that articulation is very important, and actually it's going to help you in any other proposal. That learning process is going to work well. So the integration of the topic, research foundation, broader impacts, weave together and well thread, and that should show into your timetable, deliverables, objectives, and things that you meet and the products that you're achieving. And I think people will be also looking, okay, how does this lead to a career? After, what is life look after 5 years? And your best guess.
Okay, thank you. So we have some questions are coming in now. So does current and pending a factor in the reviewing of the career proposal? I think the only issue of current pending is basically the potential overlap of subject matter that might be in a current grant or a pending grant that reviewers look at, and we also look at, and as a program director, especially if we're going to recommend something for award. You can have multiple proposals into NSF that are pending, but of course they should all be different research questions. That's
Probably, Carol, they must seem that you can do them and lead them.
mhm. Yes. Here's a kind of a general philosophical question. What do you view as successful balance for the proposed effort division between research and education? We have thoughts of
That
that.
is a good philosophical question. So I'll just reiterate what one of my colleagues said about this is your career, right? Like this is where is your career going and how are you aligning this work with building that career so that you will be a role model for future faculty. The balance of education and research in your different positions is different. You are from different institutions doing different things, but you are building your career. And so you should think about that balance within the context of where and how you're building your career. I don't know if my colleagues want to add to that.
Well said, I think, yeah, I think the answer is it depends, and it depends upon what institution you're in and where you want to go.
But at the end, you're doing research in some areas, whatever is the area, and that is going to be, you know, and depending on that, the institutional framework that Jean correctly mentioned, you're going to balance that out. But that's a career. That's a career.
Just add it to what was just said, right? You have to find balance, like Jean said very eloquently. However, realize one thing, that NSF proposals are evaluated on two criteria: intellectual merit and broader impact, right? So weave that in, that even your education and career plans should also have a broader impact. So keep that at the back of your mind.
Okay, so we have how different is the writing style of a career expected from a non-career NSF proposal? I would just say, you know, again, we have a new solicitation, NSF 22-586, and it's important to read it several times so it kind of resonates for you. And the career proposal has these two pillars of emphasizing education, your leadership as an educator and your leadership as a researcher. And so that's really a distinguishing feature of the career proposal as compared to maybe a what we call an unsolicited proposal to a core program. And of course, the career proposal is a 5-year project, so it can be much more complex than a 3-year project that's typically the duration for the core programs. So I don't know, we're going to get into the some nitty-gritty. Preliminary data always comes up, and this is a balancing act because it's not expected for you to do your whole project before you get funded to do it. So I'll just say, you know, 2 things about preliminary data in terms of its purposes. One is to establish capability, your capability, your expertise. And that's one purpose of preliminary data. The other purpose of preliminary data I see is you might have a piece of your project that might be particularly risky, which is okay because we're NSF and we want to fund high risk, high reward research. But reviewers don't want to see a project fall apart because a risky piece doesn't work the way you think it does. And so that's also an instance that preliminary data might indicate kind of that kind of reduce the risk of that particular piece. And it doesn't even have to be your preliminary data. It might be similar preliminary data in the literature. And colleagues have the common question of how much preliminary data.
Yeah, I think you kind of hit it really well, because I mean, you just need it. Your job in the proposal is to convince reviewers that you can do this work that you've proposed. And sometimes that's preliminary data helps. Sometimes it's just sort of, you know, having a command of the field in terms of what's been done and things like that. But so it's not a requirement, but use it if it helps, you know, if it helps you convince reviewers that you have the expertise needed to do the work you propose.
One basic question that probably most of us have done to ourselves when writing a proposal, whether career or others, is if I were reviewing this proposal, how would I read it? What should I expect? It's a challenge because, you know, it's almost asking a person being in two different seats at the same time. And you don't want to fall in the middle, kind of, because, but that back and forth. And if we go back to what Carol mentioned and Susan mentioned before, there are folks in your institutions, or you have colleagues in your networks, or you're networking here. There is somebody else being successful, submitting proposal that can help you in reviewing and being very critical. And take those critical that critical advice positively. It's like when you are submitting a paper to a journal. If you start fighting with the reviewers of the journal, it's not going to go too far. We know how that works. Okay, but take a critical, so that helps you in this career path.
You know, most of you have probably by now graded classes or dealt with students who contest your grades. And you know in the back of your mind how it goes, right? So just echoing Jose's point of view, what I would highly recommend, if you can do it and if you have the time, try and finish your draft early on, right? And then forget for 3 days and say 3 days later, you pick it up as if you're reviewing a journal article and read it and say, why would you not fund it? You wrote it, that's fine, but put a different hat on and say, what holes can you find when you put a critical hat on? And you can't just read it right there and switch to it. So give yourself a few days to kind of decouple from it. And you'll certainly find that many times the second read, people will go back and rewrite the whole thing because they didn't like what they saw the first time around. So don't upload your first draft as a career proposal, would be my only advice.
Okay, so we have some questions kind of like, when should I submit my career proposal in terms of where I am in my career? And in the end, it's your decision. And I would just say it's important to definitely work with your mentors, talk with your departmental chair or departmental chair equivalent, depending upon your organization, of what makes sense for where you are in your career. And so I think the only thing I would say right off that you can do without even an NSF grant is to volunteer to be a reviewer. And that's a really good way to understand how the NSF merit review process works and what goes into proposals and what they look like and what makes a compelling communication. And so you can volunteer to be a reviewer and you don't have to have NSF funding. And all you do is it's best to put together your 2-page bio sketch and email the program director of kind of the programs that your research lab kind of aligns with. And it's probably more than one. And in the email, maybe put keywords to your expertise, and in the subject line, say volunteer to be a reviewer. Engineering, we don't have any deadlines for the core program. So we're reviewing for proposals pretty much year round now. So there'll be opportunities to review. So I don't know if colleagues have any thoughts about, kind of the strategy of when to submit a career proposal or the thinking behind it.
What I would say is, if your career proposal is an extension of your dissertation, then give yourself some time to come up with something new, right? The initial part is many times colleagues come in, they just started, and the very first year they want to just continue their dissertation work, there's nothing wrong with it unless you can find a very different angle or going, which is foundational and unique. Just don't try and extend what you've been doing for 5 years. So that when you think you're at a point where you can ideate, write it, and send it.
Okay.
Yeah, I would just add, the career is different. It's 5 years. It's thinking about your career. It's integrating education and research. When you are ready to do that, you're ready to do that. and you will know, right? Because in your, people take different amounts of time to be ready to think about the trajectory of their career and what 5 years of research looks like. For some of you, your PhD was that long, but the amount of time you actually spent as a really expert student during that time was much shorter than 5 years, right? And so you need to think about what 5 years of work looks like and how to articulate why the reviewers should support that view of 5 years investment in a really important question. So it is a very different frame you're trying to make. And if you're not sure you know how to do that, you're probably right that you're not sure, right? And so take the time to really be sure you're ready for putting together a program that would run for that duration and be funded at the level that careers are funded at.
Carol, there's a hand raised. That's Satar.
Hi, I have two questions basically. One of them is that I don't normally see in NSF solicitations is the mitigation plans. How important that is. I think you kind of touched on it when you said, all right, like if the idea doesn't work, like that's okay, high risk, high reward. But how important is to have like a mitigation plan, like a data management plan in case something goes wrong with the experiment, we don't get the expected results. Do we need to account for those and have a contingency plan? I guess that's a better word to use. So that was my first question, and I forgot the second one. I'll ask it when it comes back to me. Thanks.
Well, in terms of, I think that's not a required section of the proposal, the project description. But I think it is depending upon your research project. In many programs, reviewers will probably appreciate, especially for those pieces of your project that are most risky, to make sure that fundamental knowledge results regardless of what happens. And I want to emphasize that here at NSF, we want to fund high reward, high risk research. So we're not telling or suggesting not to conduct high risk research, because that's why we're around at NSF. But that is a natural question that the reviewers, and that could be also a topic of discussion with your program director of the program that you're thinking to apply to, of strategies. So I'll just kind of stop there. Yeah.
Yeah. I'll just add a quick thing on there and just say that, I think, if it's like a key piece of your research sort of goal or whatever, and if it doesn't work out, the rest of the project is kind of shot, then you need to sort of think about like what are the other paths that you would take with that finding. And the other thing I would just say is like we often, I think, get wrapped up in that research is only good as if we prove sort of the hypothesis or the question that we're looking at, if we sort of show it to be true. But finding out that something doesn't work, that is still knowledge. And so that's still a contribution that in many cases is worthy of, you shouldn't be ashamed of, right? It's like we've learned something new and we can report that out. So those are my two sort of somewhat related thoughts.
I would add and hearken to something that Shekhar said earlier. Think like a reviewer. If you were reading it and you think if that part failed, I would want to know what they're planning to do, then you really need that to be in there. And you are an expert on your topic. So you know whether the reviewers are going to say, wow, that is a catastrophic failure, or that is a go, no go decision in a research program. So the more that you can put on your hat as a potential reviewer and read with that eye, a lot of the questions I'm seeing appearing in KI, I'm thinking, yes, so put on your reviewer hat and think about what the reviewer would say, and you'll be able to answer some of those questions yourself. You haven't reviewed many proposals, but you've probably all reviewed papers, and you know the kind of things you see and say, yeah, we need some more there, or it needs to be better explained.
That actually, go ahead, sorry.
So, sorry, no, and I'll just extend what both of them said, right? To your real life, forget research, right? You're building you are the developer, you're going into New York City to buy a condo, which is in the nicest, bright, best building that they've put together. You went buying a penthouse. There's no fire exit. Would you take it?
No.
That's where I'll leave it, right?
Okay.
So there always has to be a fire exit.
Yeah, that makes a perfect sense. That brings me up to the other question. I've been reviewer for even other proposals, not NSF, and I even sent email to program directors like, yeah, I'm available for review. I haven't received anything, and I'm fine. I'm really busy right now, so I'm actually happy that I haven't. But at the same time, I cannot put that hat on as an NSF reviewer unless, that's why I was really excited about this workshop, unless I actually review for NSF, because I've worked with other federal agencies. Their review process is a little different. They want something to work, right? NSF is all about, okay, let's increase the knowledge and science. So is there anything else we need to do? What else would you recommend to being able to review for NSF besides sending emails to program directors?
Email them again.
Email them again.
Yes, yeah.
And call them, yeah.
Again, we're reviewing proposals throughout the year, and in engineering, and it's not just in the core programs. We also have special topic solicitations that are throughout the year as well. Of course, typically for career programs, that would probably not be the case, because we would use reviewers who probably are not eligible for the career program as reviewers. But in all other core programs and special topic solicitations, they are year round. So I would just be patient, and again, just ping, the program officer again, and just say, hey, if there's any, things coming up, keep me in mind, type of thing. Don't be shy.
I just feel like they might feel that I'm pushing it, and I don't want them to think that. Either they think, okay, this doesn't fall into these areas of expertise.
Satar, sorry to interrupt you. Let's give everybody else time. So if you have something which is one-on-one, let's take it offline, okay?
Okay. So there was one theme of questions, because I know, Andy, I think we're going to the top of the hour.
Correct.
There is a theme of questions about collaborators in a career proposal. So a career proposal in the end is all about you, the PI. There are no co-PIs on the career proposal, but you are allowed budget for senior personnel, and you can also have sub-awards and consultants as part of the budget. Now, this is a balancing act, and you can have also with other projects, sometimes non-funded collaborators. In all these cases, you don't want it to come across, the perception to come across that these other people are a major contributor to the intellectual merit and broader impacts of the project, because the career is all about you. So it is a balancing act. And there are some, and I'll alert you to, the PAPPG, there's language on how to treat unfunded collaborators. You include a letter of collaboration, and there's just the stock language from the PAPPG, and you can also describe their role, I think, in the facilities and equipment section. And if you have any like senior personnel, again, there are no letters of support. I see some questions about letters of support. There are no letters of support in a career proposal. You would just have that letter of collaboration with the stock language and describe their role, either in the project description, the 15-page project description, or in the facility section. And again, you don't want it to get across that they have a major role. So I had something else, but it went off my brain. But it is a balancing act. I don't know if any other questions about kind of the role of collaborators in a project. If any of my colleagues have any comments on that.
You cover it very well.
Okay. And I do want to.
Excuse me. Can I ask you a quick question about the senior personnel? Can we have a senior personnel who himself or herself applying for the career award?
You mean concurrently?
Yeah.
I think it's up to you how you structure your project.
Mhm.
Okay.
Um,
Yeah, I don't know
Uh,
about the conflict of interest or
So
something.
again, we're trying to get people to record their questions on the link that was provided by KI Storm.
Yeah.
And we promise to get to them, and you'll have many, 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 many chances to ask more questions of program directors.
So there's one question about reviewers for career proposals. I'll just cover this because some of you might be participating in the mock panel as quote mock reviewers, and you'll find that you most likely don't have expertise in the proposals that you're reviewing. I want to make sure everyone knows, regardless of whether you're submitting, participating in the mock panel or not, is that your proposal, your career proposal, will be reviewed by experts in your discipline field, in that field. You know, it's not. Yeah, your proposal will be reviewed by experts in your field, but period. But it's important to understand the review environment. So again, you know, career proposals in engineering are reviewed in dedicated career panels. And in general, they're definitely more heterogeneous in topic than maybe compared to an unsolicited proposal panel that might be more homogeneous in the types of research questions that panel covers. And so again, I think I talked about that in the beginning and maybe in the talk about this kind of 2 levels of communication in your proposal. You're talking to the reviewers, again, that's your audience, and you're talking to the experts in your area, but you also might be talking to other experts in other areas within that program description. And so talking to your program director, you'll kind of understand the typical review environment. So for example, in my my program, I typically have, you know, disciplines from chemistry, mechanical engineering, material science, chemical engineering, mechanical engineering, all of those type of discipline backgrounds, expertise on my panel. And so that's kind of your audience. And those kind of questions can be it's a good discussion point with your program director.